Captain Jack Bell, First Officer Steve Carter, Second Officer Len Rossman fly for Delta Airlines. They fly the Delta 747, world's largest jetliner. And this is what things look like in the cockpit. Captain Jack Bell is one of the 3,100 pilots who fly Delta's fleet of 176 jets and carry over 2 million passengers each month. Jack Bell started out with Delta flying a DC-3. Now he's sitting in the captain's seat of a Delta 747. He has over 29,000 hours and 10 million air miles under his seatbelt. He's a highly skilled professional. One of the 26,000 people who make Delta the airline run by professionals. When you're flying, it's nice to know there's a Jack Bell up front. Delta is ready when you are.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for coming in. I hope you enjoyed that old classic Delta Airlines commercial that I remember seeing. We have Mr. Eve here with us. Say hi, Mr. Eve.
Hello, everyone.
So we're going to go over, yes, we have little Eve in the background. So we're just going to have to deal with that today. But we wanted to talk about, especially Mr. Eve, he's been bothering me for weeks on this, saying if I don't get it together and do a live about this situation, he's just going to keep pestering me. But it is something that I think everybody needs to know about because Boeing has had some issues. Yes, so Brooke is saying, yay, you're doing the whistleblower story. It's actually very interesting. I didn't know true crime went as far as it did in the aviation community. I mean, we have people got the whistleblower against Boeing's quality assurance, basically, process. So we're going to get into that. I think if you're going to be flying on these Boeings, it should be worth noting that these are the issues happening and that we should all be aware of it. So, Mr. Eve, do you want to start us off by what happened?
Well, first, I want to say aviation is still the safest way of traveling. So no matter what, there are checks and balances in our systems to be able to try to get rid of some of these issues. That being said, Boeing has let some of those go. And we just need to let people know about what's going on in the aviation world and, show them that, hey, we're working on it. We're trying to get everything back on track. So aviation still stays the safest way of traveling and the fastest form of traveling.
So can you tell everybody what you do for work? And I'm going to go make googly faces at the baby.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm a aircraft mechanic. I've been working on airplanes ever since I was little Eve's age. So I've been, around airplanes my entire life. My entire family has been in aviation. My grandfather. I mean, I'm I think third generation aviation guy. My kiddos are going to be the fourth generation. I do inspections on aircraft and make them safe to fly every year. We also, find lots of issues that could lead to a problem down the road. Doesn't mean that it's unsafe, but we need to, address the issue. We also troubleshoot and find broken parts. It's very fun for me. Every day is something new, especially finding out new ways to do troubleshooting.
Yeah. All right. So you make planes fly.
I do make planes fly.
And you inspect them, and you inspect your work and other people's work, and then yell at me for not doing the accounting side. for at least a year and a half now.
It works.
I'm doing my best. So, real quick, hold on just a second, guys. All right, so we had a little blowout on the runway here. So we're going to get Mr. Eve to take care of that real quick. I'm going to play some videos that I think that you should be aware of with this whistleblower getting got. All right. He was found deceased in his vehicle. He was 62 years old, been with the company for 30 years, just retired. And so when the FAA was doing the audit and the investigation regarding all of these unfortunate crashes and issues with these 747, 737 MAX Boeing airlines, jets, they were having issues. And he had to be the one to come out and say, okay, this is what we were told to do, etc. So he was found again dead in his vehicle outside of his hotel room at 62 years old in South Carolina. All right, so let's play the footage. This is what he was saying before he got. And let me see what date this was. January 31st, 2024. And he was found deceased 3 weeks ago. Let's play that footage.
The FAA is saying that the plane is now safe to fly. What do you say?
One, this is not a 737 problem. It's a Boeing problem. And I know the FAA's gone in and they've done due diligence and inspections to assure that the door plugs of the 737 are installed properly and the fasteners are torqued properly. But my concern is what's the rest of the airplane? What's the rest of the condition of the airplane? And the reason my concern for that is back in 2012, Boeing started removing inspection operations off their jobs. So it left the mechanics to buy off their own work. So what we're seeing with the door plug blowout is what I've seen with the rest of the airplane as far as jobs not being completed properly, inspection steps being removed, issues being ignored. My concerns are with the 737 and the 787 because those programs have really embraced the theory that quality is overhead and non-value added. So those two programs have really put a strong effort into removing quality from the process. When I first started working at Charles,
That's pretty scary. So when I met Mr. Eve, this was the first experience of the aviation industry from the back end side of things. So I wasn't aware of the intricacies, even though it's the safest form of travel. You know, I think we all have had a fear of flying at one point because we've seen movies and we've seen news footage of the worst thing in the world happening. Snakes on a plane. Yeah. So it was eye-opening to see what goes on in the background. And it's very important that quality assurance is there and that, you know, you have inspection, the IAs who release these aircraft from the mechanics who are working on them be thorough and all of that jazz, because this is people's lives. You're flying in a tube in the air at what's the average altitude?
It depends on what.
40,000?
About
40,000. So yeah, I mean, we use snakes, Nene says. Nobody wants snakes ever, but especially on a plane. So
there's actually a funny story about snakes on a plane.
I don't want to talk about snakes on a plane. I really don't. But anyway, this guy getting got after what? This was on January 31st. He was found deceased 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
So he was on his second or third testimony about the failings of some of these things that the FAA found.
and I was in charge with pushing back defects to our suppliers. And what that meant was I'd take a group of inspectors and actually go to the supplier and inspect their product before they sent it in. Well, I'd taken a team of 4 inspectors to Spirit Aerosystems to inspect the 41 section before they sent it to Charleston. And we found 300 defects. Some of them were significant that needed engineering intervention. When I returned to Charleston, my senior manager told me that we had found too many defects and he was going to take the next trip. So the next trip he went on, he took 2 of my inspectors. And when they got back, they were given accolades for only finding 50 defects. So I pulled that inspector aside and I said, did Spirit really clean up their act that quick? I don't.
Okay, Mr. Eve, I've seen you do inspections and I've seen Quantum, the software you use, and all of these damn red flags and what are they called?
For what?
Discrepancies.
Uh-huh.
One of them I saw like 20. So is 50 a big number for having issues?
You okay, so you kind of gotta look at it this way. The airplane is X big.
Yeah.
So it's a big difference in size. I work on mostly smaller aircraft, like corporate size.
Yeah, those Cessnas, those
and
King Airs.
you know, little GA style airplanes. Well, the bigger jets, the Boeings, and you know the McDonnell Douglases, the what else? The Airbus. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
There's the other one. Those are big airplanes,
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot of distance in between each of those parts, and there's a lot of structure ribs in between there that you could actually find hundreds of different discrepancies on one airplane, and really that not be too much.
Okay. Well,
Just because it's a big airplane.
Well, what do you think, itty bitties? You think you'd like airplanes? You work on them? I see. A baby with little words. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Uh-huh.
You got something to say?
Yeah. Yeah, he does. So 50 it depends on what it is, right? There could be something like sealant issues, or it could be as big as
a lot of these discrepancies aren't necessarily airworthiness issues. So airworthiness issues, a good way to look at airworthiness issues are safety of flight.
Mm-hmm.
Things that will actually could cause the aircraft to crash or have an incident.
Mm-hmm.
But some discrepancies, some of my discrepancies, if I feel picky that day,
Mm-hmm.
are sealant. Oh, the sealant's a little cracked.
Right. It's discretion, which is kind of scary, but I know that, if you're experienced, that's why you have to work under another IA for how many years before?
You don't.
Oh, okay. But you had to work under one for 2 years.
No, you have to. You have to be an A&P for. You have to be an A&P for 3 years, actively working for 2.
Oh, I see. So, Brick says Dad got after some guy for putting screws that were too long in the wing piece and threw a fit. If the plane had gone up, the flaps would have gotten hung up and not been functional. I think you've had an issue with that yourself.
I
with
have.
Somebody trying to put the wrong size screws in.
A lot of the times, I find that most in windshields, where they put the wrong screws in windshields.
You just can't do that.
And so aviation, we do things a lot differently when it comes to screw lengths and things of that nature. We only have 1 or 2 threads of the screw actually being shown on the other side of the fastener. So you may look at it and be like, oh, that screw's too short, but actually by the letter of how it's designed and how it's made, that is the correct way to do it. That's actually a really good fix, though, or a really good find for your dad, because we've a lot of the times I see it all the time. Mechanics just put all the screws in one bag when taking one thing off instead of you know, different screw lengths in, different bag or marked where it should be going.
All right. Well, let's finish this. I want to get to what happens to John Barnett, I believe his name is, because that's true crime on my side, is wondering what happened to John Barnett, who was testifying against Boeing.
Don't sound right. And she was mad. She said no. Said the 2 inspectors were given 2 hours to inspect the whole 41 section, and they were kicked off the airplane.
All right. So again, John Barnett on January 31st of this year, alive and well, speaking out. Now I'm going to show you guys Boeing failing, why he is having to testify, basically. Because it wasn't the company, what was it? American Airlines, right?
Alaska
Alaska Airlines problem. It was a Boeing problem. Which are two different things, two different entities. And we looked at the FAA report, and wow, me and Mr. Eve was looking through the photos and what they were documenting, and it was insane. The doors ripped off of one of them. I believe it was a 737. So the doors that, if you have an emergency exit, and actually getting off and on the plane in the middle, I believe, ripped off.
That's
completely
that's the emergency exit window.
The emergency exit window. That's not good, right? Scared me to death. I'm like, well, I'm not sitting over there anymore.
It's my favorite seat.
It's your favorite seat, and you always make me sit there.
To keep that plane, the door panel blew off of mid-flight in service. It was scheduled to come in for a maintenance check that night after warning lights on the Boeing 737 MAX indicated problems with the plane's pressurization system. Alaska Airlines telling CBS News just moments ago it remains confident in its maintenance and safety actions. CBS' Chris Van Cleve reports this comes as we're learning new details about an audit that found dozens of issues in Boeing's manufacturing process.
After the dramatic mid-air blowout of a door panel in January, the FAA launched an audit of Boeing 737 production.
They had to ride in that tube with the side exit emergency door blown out. Baby, new fear unlocked.
Production process. Boeing failed 33 of 89 sections, including one dealing with the same type of door panel. The FAA also found 97 incidents of alleged noncompliance. The most common was failing to follow Boeing's own standards and practices. The audit comes as Boeing admitted to lawmakers last week it cannot find paperwork documenting repairs performed on that Alaska Airlines door panel, saying it is likely that it was never created. The NTSB investigation indicates the bolts holding that door in place were not reinstalled.
We will continue to increase our oversight.
The bolts were not installed. Reinstalled, I mean.
They were installed. They were loose. They were never tightened.
Well, let me replay that because Mr. Eve can't hear what we're listening to. Let me play it again.
Were not reinstalled.
They were not
continue
reinstalled.
To increase our oversight to make sure.
Oh, some of the bolts were missing.
Getting their airworthiness.
Meaning the bolts were not even there. How do you not know that? Whew. And who was supposed to be the oversight of this when they were installing this?
So
the side door back in.
Since that's a door that does not come out, doesn't have an inspection.
Well, maybe that's what they need to change then. So Mr. Eve said that's because that door doesn't, basically when you uninstall it to do whatever you need to do and reinstall it, that's where it stays. It doesn't open up or whatever. So nobody inspects it because
when it was initially put in by Boeing, that's why it's a Boeing issue and not a American or Alaska Airlines.
Right. Because they didn't do it. It was the the maintenance.
And from what I've seen on what I've seen picture wise from the you know,
Certificates
aircraft
or quality
mechanic
assurance where it needs.
community,
Yeah.
you can't see where it's at. You can't see those items easily.
Is that Buttigieg or whatever his name is?
Judge.
Buttigieg. Yeah, he doesn't look like he's too happy. With a last name like that, I wouldn't either. So yeah, I actually, he did the press release recently about them investigating the bridge collapse. Isn't that what his job is to...
Department of Transportation. He's the Secretary of Department of Transportation.
Yeah. He's got his hands full these past year, 2 years. He seems to be doing all right. All right, so we're going to play the family speaking out after the death of John Barnett. And his lawyer speaks out as well, which I thought was interesting. So again, this is John Barnett, who was found deceased in his car outside of his hotel room at 62 years old. He again worked for Boeing for 30 years. Yeah, 30 plus years. Just retired. So.
Boeing MAX 9 back in the air this morning, 3 weeks after that frightening in-flight blowout of a door plug.
That should have been a wake-up call to the FAA, to Boeing.
We believe in our airplanes. We have confidence in the safety of our airplanes.
We're going to hold Boeing accountable for that. We're going to hold them to a higher standard.
Boeing might be cleared for takeoff, but the aviation giant is under increasing scrutiny.
An Ethiopian Airlines plane has crashed on its way to Nairobi.
Evidence is pointing to mechanical failure.
After 2 fatal crashes and a recent mid-air emergency involving its 737 MAX planes, the regulator is paying close attention to its production processes. Former US employees have told the ABC the latest incident involving the Alaska Airlines flight was horrific, but not a surprise.
When I heard it was a MAX.
That's really sad that they say it was horrific, but not a surprise. They weren't surprised that this was happening. So there was already indication of something like this happening in the future.
Quality assurance issues.
So they were already aware. That's crazy.
MAX plane, I knew it had been built in our factory. You know, my instant reaction was that plane shouldn't have been built. We should have stopped production. Everything was being rushed.
This is shocking because the plane wasn't even 3 months old yet.
Oh, no, gee.
John Barnett worked on the Boeing factory floor in South Carolina as a quality manager for 3 decades before retiring in 2017. He said he raised multiple safety issues during his time there, but says they were ignored or minimised.
I've seen how they're built, and I'm not going to fly them.
He straight up said, I've seen how they're built. I will not fly on them. If maintenance is telling you this, do not fly on these specific planes. And you can look at the flights, and it'll obviously tell you which plane it is that you're flying on. So you can choose which one you want. It might not be on the day or time that you're looking for, but your life matters, right? So maybe that's something to take into consideration for the moment until this investigation, comes to a head and there's more QA transparency that they're doing the right things.
This is a simulator for a Boeing 737, and I'm with commercial pilot Josh Hicks. As a pilot, what's going through your mind and what steps are you taking if you're flying a plane that has some sort of emergency situation, like part of the plane falling off, as was the case in the Alaskan Airlines incident?
The steps you'd follow immediately would be the pilots putting on oxygen masks to make sure that they're receiving oxygen, they're not affected by the pressure difference inside and outside the aircraft. And then after that, you're focusing on manipulating the air conditioning pressurization units as well as the passenger oxygen units to make sure they're getting oxygen too.
Currently, no Australian airlines have the 737 MAX 9 planes in their fleets.
Well, they currently have no. Australia said, nope, we ain't fooling with your bullshit. 737s, get gone. US, you can have them.
-9.
Yeah, so, but still, I don't know if that means the US that's flying to Australia, does that mean that they would have to meet somewhere in the middle and change? How does that work?
So it means a lot of the times with that, if there is a restriction on a certain type of airplane, that type of airplane won't even be on that route.
So they would have to, let's just say you're going from US to Australia, and US says it's cool to have these for now. You would have to then probably change flight. You'd have to have a layover and then go onto another plane.
The 737 can't go from.
Oh, they can't. Okay. But just saying, if that was the case, they would have to work around that.
Yeah. The airline companies would.
Wow. So let's see what he says about oxygen masks, because I know that you work on those, or I've seen you have to check those. So
I just did.
Yeah, you just did. Yeah.
By removing the faulty oxygen bottles from the production line.
So their culture is all about speed and production and getting airplanes out the door. And any issues, any concerns that you bring up is going to slow them down.
Although Mr. Barnett worked on a different aircraft, the Dreamliner, he believes the same oxygen system is used on other planes, including the 737 MAX jets. Former Boeing manager Ed Pearson, who worked at the Seattle factory until 2018, says he reported safety issues on the 737 MAX planes before the two fatal crashes.
All right, so there have been plenty of warning. So that's basically what the rest of this is explaining, that there have been issues pretty much since 2017, 18 onward. And then tragedies happened, and then they took it seriously, and it hurt their reputation. And then COVID happened in 2020, and everything kind of stood still. They were losing a lot of money.
There also is a big aircraft mechanic shortage.
Right.
So a lot of these companies, these bigger companies, are not employing actual AMPs anymore. They're employing, Joe Schmo off of the street, and giving him a general, hey, this is how you work on an airplane, go do it.
What is the pay for those mechanics typically?
Depends.
Just normal run of the mill, not like supervisory or anything, just straight off the bat.
Honestly, I couldn't tell you.
Because you're in a different kind of industry. Let's look it up. I'm kind of interested too.
I know when I worked in a manufacturing or aircraft mechanic or manufacturing job, and I was making $22.50.
Right. It says 40 to 48.
Back in 2011.
Aircraft mechanic, 28 to 47. Just depends on what you're working on the plane, right? QA makes a little more. Because their job is more scrutinized. I hope so now. So yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. All right, so let's go into the family side of things, and then we're going to have to wrap up because we have another little Eve to
go get
to tend to. Yeah. There we go. And then Mr. E can stop yapping at me about going live on this issue. But it is again, important, I believe. So these are the parents of John Barnett.
Is to be a race car driver.
We also have more aviation true crime we can talk about.
Yeah, this will be a series. Now, not like tomorrow, Mr. Eve. You have to give me some time, but.
Or I'll just let you make videos about it.
Yeah, I would love that. Scare everybody to pieces so they won't fly again. Can't wait. Including myself. All right.
Drive, I'll still flying.
I'll drive. Okay.
Hearing from the family of a Boeing whistleblower who was found dead earlier this month. John Barnett, a former Boeing employee, had been giving evidence in a whistleblower lawsuit against the company. A coroner says he died from what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. It comes as Boeing's safety practices have come under new scrutiny due to a series of recent mid-air incidents. Mark Strassman spoke with Barnett's mother and brother, and he's in Charleston, South Carolina. Mark, good morning. We're learning a lot about Mr. Barnett.
Good morning, Vlad. We are learning a lot. John Barnett was the quality manager for Boeing and the type of guy who had no problem speaking up when something was wrong. And for that, his whistleblower lawsuit claims the company retaliated against him.
He never wanted to try to bring Boeing down or hurt him. That was the least of his agenda.
Vicki Stokes' son, John Barnett, spent more than 3 decades working at Boeing.
Initially, he loved Boeing.
Yes.
Rodney Barnett says his brother John became concerned when he transferred to Boeing's South Carolina plant in 2010.
What kind of problems did he tell you that he noticed in the factory?
Quality issues, procedures that wasn't being followed, shortcuts that was trying to be taken.
Barnett claimed he was retaliated against for speaking up. He
It's
left
really
the company
sad.
in 2017.
He didn't go into a lot of detail, but I know he was like embarrassed at meetings. He would be called out.
Was his treatment at work, did it wear on him?
Oh, yes. That would wear anybody down after, I don't know whether it's 7 or 8 years.
In a whistleblower lawsuit, Barnett alleged a litany of safety concerns: titanium shavings falling into electrical wiring, defective oxygen tanks, and managers urging him to cut corners. Robert Turkowitz and Brian Knowles represent Barnett.
The retaliation John faced was something he endured constantly.
He wasn't trying to hurt Boeing. He was trying to save Boeing. He saw this coming, and he said at some point, this is all going to come down on Boeing.
In recent months, Boeing has grappled with questions about its safety culture, specifically repeated problems with its 737 MAX planes, including the mid-flight blowout of an Alaska Airlines door. Barnett worked on a different plane, but raised similar concerns.
What was his reaction to those headlines?
It wasn't joyful, I can tell you that. The whole thing was the flying public. He had their back. All these times, he's had their back trying to stand up, get safety concerns straightened out.
Earlier this month, Barnett was found dead in his truck from what the coroner says was an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Do you believe this was a suicide?
The investigation is going on right now, and yeah, we're not going to go to that. We're going to wait and see what the investigation brings out.
Do you blame Boeing?
I think if this hadn't have gone on so long, I'd still have my son. My sons would still have their
is going on right now, and yeah, we're not going to go to that. We're going to wait and see what the investigation brings out.
Do you blame Boeing?
I think if this hadn't have gone on so long, I'd still have my son. My sons would still have their brother, and we wouldn't be sitting here. So in that
I'm going to have to switch to a regular microphone. So if it's poppy, I'm sorry. But that's really sad. So they're basically saying, they're asking the family, do you think that it is, a suicide, or did someone retaliate against him? And basically they're just saying they don't know. But either way, it caused this. And so they do hold, in some regard, Boeing responsible for the reasoning no matter what. And I agree with that. So they still are waiting for the investigation to continue. I know that the coroner said that it was a suicide. But that's being investigated too. So we'll see about it. Mr. Eve, we have to go. is there any last things that you would like to say until next time about this? And should people be scared?
You shouldn't be scared. Especially, aviation safety record is unmatched to any other service known to humans.
Right.
So you should be concerned, but it should be one of those thoughts in the way back of your mind.
Yeah.
Like, walking down the street.
Right.
Things. It's no more dangerous than walking down the street.
Right.
Aviation, there's so many great mechanics out there that are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. There are more great mechanics out there than there are bad mechanics.
I agree. And they know that they are liable for what they put out there. So it's not just a company being liable. You are liable. And you can go to prison.
You will find out later on in the series that we are held accountable.
Yeah. You get the
mechanics.
handcuffs quick, just as much as, the company that hired said person will pay out, for the civil part. But the person that put the plane together or whatever they did will get prosecuted.
And it's not, county level or anything like that. It is federal because it is aviation. Aviation, no matter what, is federal. So, we are overseen by the federal government,
right.
Not, your local county or, police department or anything like that. It is federal.
So what can people do who are flying? And let's just say they have one choice of flying on one of these damn Boeing 737 or 787 MAX airplanes. Could they look up anything about the history of what's been done on this plane or any issues?
You can't.
Oh, no. Okay, what can they do? Pray?
Yeah, I mean...
Hope for the best?
Well, you can... You brought it up earlier that you can... When you go to book a flight, you can see what aircraft it should be. What it should be. Because that can change.
Right.
The day of.
Right. Any
before.
moment. Right.
Most of the time, my personal favorite airline is Southwest because they only go to,
Southwest is the bomb.com.
San Diego, which is where I only fly to, realistically.
Right.
And
they're expanding internationally.
They do not have MAX aircraft.
Right.
They don't own any.
Brooke says, let's just say I'm flying and not going to worry about it either way. God's got me. That's the best way to look at it because it's out of your hands once you get in that tube up in the air. And honestly, this specific issue is not widespread across all Boeing aircraft. It is a specific line of parts that are put.
It's specific to the newest version of this aircraft. And the 737 has been around since the 70s.
So if you see a raggedy old, we call it a jelly bean, the purple jelly bean from Southwest. If you see that raggedy old 737 creeping up, feel better about that because, the quality assurance on those and the oversight is so thorough because they've been doing that for so many years that they know what to look for and what goes wrong habitually. There's bulletins that come out. They know what to do. The newer ones, I think COVID really made it worse.
Well, the MAX came
on top of having the issues already. COVID then nailed it in the coffin that there was no way that they could financially recoup some of the problems that they had. And they just ignored it. They just simply ignored it and was like, well, people dying versus, and being liable here or not being able to pay for it right now, I think was the decision making. And I think that they should be fined out of the wazoo. And if that means that more competitors can come onto the market, cool. Boeing is great. Everybody loves Boeing. However, that doesn't mean that they are the end all be all, especially when they're risking people's safety, right? Any last words?
That's really all I got to say. I'm excited for
This little series.
This little series, because you'll see little tidbits of.
It's really fascinating. You wouldn't think so, but it is. It really is. So I hope you guys stick around for that. Well, thank you, Mr. Eve.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone.
All right, let's go get that other child of ours. Lord help us. All right, guys, thank you so much for being here. Jeep Girl says, Kayla and I flew Southwest St. Louis to Houston. Oh, recently? I do love to fly the window seat. I do too, but sometimes I like being on the outer side to get the hell out of there if I am on a long flight. More than an hour is long to me. So I typically like to be at the edge so I can bulldoze my way through the crowd and get the hell off of there to get my coffee or whatever it may be. I just don't like being around a lot of people. People get on my nerves. Mr. Eve, not if you're in full panic mode and the plane needs to land, right? It's funny because when we were on a plane to San Diego once, I heard something and he was like telling me what he thinks the issue is, and it was one of the flaps not working 100%, but it was a flap that didn't necessarily need to work full capacity. But I was like, Mr. Eve, could you just shut up? Don't tell me these things. Keep it to yourself. Everything's fine. We're going to land. And we did. But he is so good at what he does, y'all. It's really, really amazing. He can find a discrepancy within seconds. It's so crazy. When you do it for so long, you just know what to look for. So if Mr. Eve works on your plane, feel safe. Bet that. All right, guys. Again, thank you for being here. Look out for the upcoming series on some more, probably updates on this, but also little planes, because the little planes are so cool. And there are some interesting true crime things that have happened with, let's just say, Colombia and other countries where these little planes like to fly, if you catch my drift. All right, guys. See you on the next one. Have a safe flight. Bye.
When they built those roads, they had no thought of drainage in mind. So we had to take a special Jeep up to the main road. In fact, we were lucky to even get a Jeep, since just the day before, only one that we had broke down.
Both pilots.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.